video about decodable readers. I mentioned Scarborough's reading rope. So Scarborough's reading rope actually was published around the time I finished teaching, and I'd never heard of it. It was never part of my initial teacher training, and it's 20 years old. And it's only relatively recently becoming something that educators talk about as part of everyday conversation. So what did it involve? Well, I made a little model. This is my version of Scarborough's reading rope. And you'll see there's some different elements. We've got the red and white elements, we've got red elements, we've got the blue ones. All of these features are important for a student learning to read. And in order to have all of these skills, then this part here is your proficient reader. So what's important? Well, this one over here says vocabulary. Students need to have a really good vocabulary, and they get that in many different ways, through conversations, through things that are read to them, through things that they watch on TV. Then this one says background knowledge. If you were asked to complete a comprehension about basketball, and there's a very famous research project that did this, and they asked children who knew about basketball, who were poor readers, they were able to comprehend much better than better readers who had no idea about basketball because they had no background knowledge. Have you ever read a scientific text or a text related to a very specific area of somebody else's work and you have no idea what it actually means? That's exactly the background knowledge that you need. And some children have background knowledge about camping and others don't. So it's really important to make sure you've checked in with their background knowledge before you read a text. Then we need literacy knowledge. How are sentences put together? How are paragraphs put together? Is this a poem? Is this a story? Then we need verbal reasoning. Is this right? Is this true? Can this be true? Does that really happen? Then we need to know language structures. So whether we put ES on a word, ED on a word, when we go from play to playing to play to plays, and we play around with that. And then there's these blue ones. Now these blue ones are really important in the early stages of reading. We need all of this language stuff too. This is really important. And the simple view of reading says that we need decoding multiplied by language comprehension. So we actually need, it's not just adding the two together, putting them together, we multiply the effect together to get skilled readers. So sight recognition. Now there's many interpretations of this. In Scarborough's rope, sight words are words that you look at and you know. You look at your name, you know. You look at the name of your street, you know. Not just the and of, which may actually not be words that you know by sight. And it's just simple as, what words do you know by sight? And that can be simple words through to dinosaur and other words. Then we have phonological awareness. Now this has become really topical recently, and it's something that was in my initial teacher training of being a dyslexic teacher back 15 years ago, that we needed to make sure that children are able to hear the sounds in words, tell you the first sound, tell you the last sound, manipulate the sounds in words. And I think I'll make a further video on that another day, because that's a huge area. But the one that I wanted to mention today was decoding. Now in my blog post that I just did on decodable readers, it's really, really important that we teach students how to decode the words. We don't just give them text where they have to look and guess, because none of these strategies say, look at a word and guess. It's all about phonological awareness. Can you hear the words? Can you hear the sounds in the words? It's about sight words. What words do you know that you recognise? But that comes from being able to read the words. But decoding is a really, really important skill that needs to happen in order for reading to develop. And it needs to happen in the early years. Because as I've mentioned in my blog post, it's really hard. I currently have a Year 4 student who I'm private tutoring, who looks at words and guesses. He doesn't even attempt to match the letter with the sound. So when he sees the word tap, I'm lucky if I get a word that begins with a T. He just looks at the word and guesses because he thinks that that's what you have to do. Now to undo that as a Year 4 student is really, really hard. And to go back and go, no, you have to go tap. It's really hard. So it's really important that in the early years we decode. And decodable readers are a great way that we can practice using those decoding skills. So teachers are really good at teaching the sounds, the phonics. They teach A, I says A. They may then teach a list of words with the A sound in them. But then when you go to read, they just grab the leveled reader, which may or may not have an AI word in it. Whereas if you grab the decodable reader that goes with AI, you would get lots and lots of practice reading rain and paint and all those other words that have the AI sound in them. So decodable readers really support that practice of decoding. It doesn't replace reading real books to children, reading real books with children, letting children read real books, because that's going to give them all of these red ones. But we need to have the decoding. I almost think that this decoding one probably should be double the width, because that's the really critical one in the early stages that often I feel gets missed out for some children. And children are encouraged to guess. Look at the picture and guess. Look at the picture and guess. Did you actually decode the word, or did you just read the pattern? How many books have you read with your children in the early stages that go, the cat is, the cat is, and you just look at the picture and guess. You don't even need to look at the whole word, and probably they don't have the decoding skills to even decode the word. I remember a year 2 book, that's why a level 2 book, so really early reader in my UK reading scheme, which had the word salamander in it. Well, for a UK kid, what's a salamander? And how many kids can actually work out what that word says anyway, because it's too big, it's too long. And then the text didn't matter, they didn't have any background information to add to it either. So decoding and decodable readers are really, really important in the early stages for practice, for getting children up and about and ready to read, and then going on to enjoy their reading and be good readers and good comprehenders.